Greetings and welcome. My name is Aaron Craig with Beyond Us Games, and in this GameMaker Studio tutorial, we're going to be going over queues and priority queues. So a queue is a first in, first out data structure, and the same thing cannot be said for the priority queue. They are distinct, but they have kind of the same idea behind them. So let's look at a queue first, and then talk about the priority queue, and I'm going to be showing you a possible implementation that you can use with this. So the data structure functions are fairly similar to what we've already seen with the stack. The terminology you're going to need to know is enqueue and dequeue, both of which get kind of hard to spell because there's a lot of E's and U's. So the enqueue means you are actually putting something into the queue, and dequeue means you are taking it out. Now maybe you've heard these terms in real life because you're probably part of queues all the time. A DMV line, or really any line that functions the way it should, without cutters and without favoritism, is a queue. You get into it, someone gets into it behind you, but you will be served first because you were there first. It goes first in, first out, and it follows that queue idea. So you enqueue to add, dequeue to take off, you create, destroy, read, write, copy, all of that. What you might not see before is head and tail. So head will give you the head of the queue. So it'll give you the top of it. It's kind of like peeking. It's not going to take it off, but you can see what it is. The same thing can be said for tail. You get a look at the back of the queue, so the very last item, but it's not actually going to take it off. So it's synonymous with peek and just specifically with the back and the front of the queue. So let's take a look at actually using a queue inside of our game. So I'm going to create an obj queue right here. And what I'm going to do is try to do a system of a player's, like in a turn-based battle system, one way that you could possibly implement a queue for the turn order. So if we go and we add an event, I'm going to add a create event, and we're going to make the queue. And this is going to be ds queue create. And that's all we need to do there, except we have to assign it, make sure we save it somehow. So we're just going to call this turn order. So we're going to imagine that we have an RPG with lots of pretty sprites and objects in here as well. And we're going to go and we're going to add a key pressed, and this is going to be a letter for A. It's going to be add. So we are going to add to the queue, so enqueue. And the way we do that is through the function dsqueue enqueue. Now this function can take a lot of parameters. So if we look at it, we can actually see that you can add the ID, so the queue that you're adding to is important. You have to have that. The first value, and then you can have up to 15 more values or 14 more values. There's 15 total. So this is really awesome, and one of the things that I really hope we get to do with scripts eventually is have optional parameters. That would be amazing. But this allows you to add as much as you want as long as you separate it by commas. The way that looks is like this. You say turn order. Now if we had objects here, I would actually add those into there, but we don't. So we're going to imagine that we have player 1, and we're going to add player 1 as an object right there. So when we do that, it goes in there. And then we can add player 2, and so on and so forth. But we're just going to add 2 players for now, and you can see that it works perfectly fine. We could have just 1, we could have 15, and we could call this several times as well if we wanted to. They're just making this very easy to add lots of things to the queue. Now the order you add them in is going to be important. This is the first value. This is the first item that you are adding. This is the second. So when we dequeue them, when we take them off, player 1 will be the first one to come off. And that is important to know. So now let's go to key pressed, go to letters, and let's go to D for dequeue. So dequeue from turn order. And what I want to do in here is just show a message to show that we are actually doing something, how that works. So I'm going to say show message. I'm going to scoot this over. And inside of here, I'm going to say it's, and then say plus, use the function string. Now, string just converts whatever I am putting inside of here into a string. So if it's a number, then that'll be fine. So a DSQ, when you return something from a DSQ, if we look at DQ, you can see here we get a real or a string. So we need to tell it that whatever we get back when we're talking right here, that I want it to be interpreted as a string because I'm showing it as a message right here. So we're going to say DSQ DQ turn order. Now when you DQ something, it doesn't need anything more than just where you're DQing it from, because there's only one place to take it out of the queue, and that's at the front, or I guess the end, however you want to view that. But the first one that was put in is going to be the first one that was taken out, so we just need to pass it in what queue we're talking about. So, and then close off that string, and we're going to say comma s turn. So it is player 1, player 2, enemy's turn. That's what this is going to say right here. So let's add this into the room and press F5. And then we can see if we press A once, it'll add it to the queue, and you can't actually see that. But then if we press D, it is player 1's turn. I press D again, you get player 2, and if you press it again, you get undefined. So it doesn't crash your game. So this is really handy because you can just check if it's undefined, do something else. And a way that you can actually do that would be looking like this. So inside of here, we could actually say if DSQ empty turn order is equal to true. So we're checking this right here, and what we could say is DSQ, and then we NQ something else. So we NQ the turn order, and we'll actually put in like the enemies, right? So after the players go, then the enemies get put into the queue. And again, this is just strings, so hopefully you can visualize maybe in your own game. If you had a list of enemies that you were currently fighting, then you could just iterate over that list and put each one inside of this queue, and then all of a sudden you have a queue that each enemy will attack in order. Now this is going to throw one small problem. If we add the players first, then it's going to be empty for one moment when we do this. So player 2, and then, oh, it doesn't actually. That's nice. So we have its enemy's 1 turn. Enemy 2, enemy 1, enemy 2, so on and so forth. So you can see here that we can continually add things to it, and so on and so forth. So the only time it's going to give you that undefined message is if you try to DQ it immediately. So it's undefined, but then it's going to add to it enemy 1 and 2. So that is a queue in a nutshell. Now I'm going to cover priority queues because they are kind of similar. They share a name, but at the same time, they are a little bit different. So let's go create a new object. I'm going to call this PQ, and we're going to add an event and create event, setup, and now we need to say DS priority and priority create. So they name it just priority, not priority queue, which is nice because that's a lot to type out every time. So let's say turn order is equal to DS priority create. Now I'm going to go into the room and delete the regular queue and place the priority queue in there just so that I don't forget it. Okay, so now we're going to do kind of the exact same thing. So if we look at the priority queue right here, it has a lot of the same functions. You can get the size, empty, create, destroy, copy, read, write. The ones that are different is that you're not going to see NQ and DQ anymore. Because a priority queue, it doesn't matter what you add. It's all about the priority of the item you add in. So when you actually add something, you give it a value and a priority immediately with that item. And that also means that you can't add multiple items, so there's a little bit more typing, or at least in a for loop it's going to go through several more times in there, but that's okay. The priority you give needs to be a number of some sort, and then it will place that value, that item that you're putting in there, that object, whatever it is, into the queue, and it will be wherever it should be based on the value. Now, if two things have the exact same priority, then when you actually find the max, it will return the one that you added first, just so that you know. So if there are two things that have the exact same priority, the first one, so the order is still saved, the first one will get taken out. So the way you use these is in combination. So you have find max, so you can get the max value. You can also find the minimum. And when you find the max, you'll probably also want to then delete the max. They are separate functions here. You can get the one that has the highest priority, but it doesn't delete it. So in our case, what we're going to do is we are going to add an event, just like we've done. So key pressed, letters A for add to the priority queue. And we're just going to say DS priority add. We're going to add the turn order. The value this time will be player 1, and then we're going to give it a priority of 3. Now we're going to do that again. Add a turn order. So then we're going to do player 2, and this one we're going to give a priority of 28. So this is a much higher priority than this one because it goes from 0 to up to, well, whatever the largest number that you can have inside of GameMaker. And so this doesn't matter which order you add it in. When we find the max, it's going to give us player 2 because that has the highest priority. So let's look at that in action. Let's add a key press for letter, for R, for removing it. So take out max priority. Now the way that's done is DS priority max. Find max, that's what it is. So you find the maximum, and all you have to do is give it turn order. It's very similar to the DQ because there's only going to be one thing that it returns. Now if it finds two values, again, it's going to return the one that was added first, but we don't have to give it any more information than this right here. So let's do the same kind of thing that we did before. Let's show a message. Let's just show the message of that. So I'm going to put that inside of a string function just to be safe. And now, right alongside of this, we need to do, one more. We need to do DS priority delete max. So we pass in the turn order queue, and it will get rid of the one that it just gave us. Without this delete max, it's going to continually return the one that it just found. So now if we run this and we add some to it by pressing A, we can press R and see here that player 2 comes out. Player 1 is next, and then it's undefined. And that's how priority queues work. And you can imagine that if you had all of the enemies and players in your game, and each one has a priority associated with it, and in like a turn-based game, you might have like their speed associated with it. So if their attack speed, or whatever the case may be, you just set that as their priority, then every single time you're done with a round of attacks, you throw in everyone into the priority queue, and then who's ever up first goes first. And you can find specific values inside of the priority queue by using change priority. So you can give it the ID of the turn order, the queue, and then the value, and then you can change that priority to something new. So if you have spells or items that can speed up enemies or allies, you can find whichever person you're using that on and then change the priority. That way they could come up next to attack. So this would work great for a turn-based combat system that you want to have a queue for. I'm sure that this has been used a lot because it's a really great system. And queues in computer science in general are also used a lot. So if you just remember the terminology NQ and DQ, you'll actually be fairly well off when you're talking about queues because that's really all there is to it for basic queues. First in, first out. Priority queues are pretty simple if you know what a queue is, because it has priority in its name. So you add something with a priority, and that's going to be the highest priority is going to be what's coming out once you dequeue from that, or you find max, however they word it in the system that you're using. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions about queues, priority queues, let me know. If you want to see more examples, let me know that too. If you like this, appreciate a like and subscribe. And until next time, have fun making great games, and I will talk to you later.